All right, this is Judson Powell, fastest 15 minutes in social media and on the internet. And I want you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, hit all the buttons for me. Anyway, I want to talk about fratricide today and the Cain and Abel story, and how it came about comedically, and basically how it's a lie. All right, and how it's one of the curses that was placed in the King James version of the Bible in order to help enslave us and to keep us down as a people. And so, first of all, fratricide, like I said, is the killing of brothers. And the basically, I got this because I was thinking about a teaching that I saw from the late ancestor C. Freeman L. And so I like to watch people's stuff. And so there was a time when I was just like going through and I was just like checking out everything he ever did. And I mean, this is probably about a year ago or so, maybe even a little bit longer. But at that particular time, it was so coincidental because there was like the video was like made like years earlier. But at that time, that was the time when there was such a high homicide rate and fratricide rate in Chicago, in the city of Chicago, and there were black men killing other black men. And so, and then of course, you know, the probably the most famous one was when Nipsey Hussle, because that just sparked off this whole Nipsey Hussle thing. But basically, he was killed by another black man. So we suspect or whatever. And once again, in the words of Malcolm X, they'll hire a black man to kill a black man so that they can say that it was a black man. Just read between the lines on that one, right? All right. So, but Cain and Abel. All right. So this was the release of the spirit of fratricide upon the world. And everybody is like, because, okay, and it's in what? It's in the book of, you have to realize these are manifest destiny things. These are self-fulfilling prophecies. Okay, so why is that story necessary? Okay, so you have Adam and Eve, original, then you have this sin, this original sin, and then all of a sudden, the next sin is murder. It's like one, and so so you sit up there and you wonder to yourself, well, why, and the circumstances in the Cain and Abel story are kind of dumb, aren't they? When you really think about it. Okay, so, Cain was a farmer, Abel raised cattle, and they both offered an offering to God. God liked Abel's offering better than Cain's, so Cain got jealous and killed him. Okay, so why? Let's just analyze, why would that happen? And so now, and they're brothers, and there's nobody else on earth. That's the other thing. There's nobody else on earth but you get. And so then God doesn't really, he punishes. He says he's going to be a vagrant and a vagabond, but then he goes like to the next town over and he marries his sister and he has more children. And then, and then the other thing is like, okay, now, and where did this sister come from all of a sudden? And then all of a sudden their mother has another child and she says, this one is to replace Abel. All right. And so, so I'm trying to get this all straight. So I'm just trying to get y'all to see what's going on and to see the fact that it is a spell. It is a demonic spell. All right. It's not, because no parts of it make sense. And jealousy. Okay. And then God talks about later on when we get into the laws and all this kind of stuff, that God is a jealous God. Which means that if God is a jealous God, because I remember teaching and preaching this like back in the day and talking about how sin, keeps on piling up and piling up. So you start off with one emotion, first you get angry, then you get jealous, then you get envious, and then you get, so all of these things are what? They're negative spirits. So all of these negative spirits are being released into the earth. All right. Because before that, and let me get back to C. Freeman L. Because before that, C. Freeman L. was doing this teaching, and he said, in Africa, before the colonizers got to Africa, there was no fratricide. There was no black on black crime. That tribes fought each other, they captured each other, but they were not murderous. In other words, you got captured in the game and you would have to, perform some maybe indentured servitude, but they would let you go. And they never split up families, and they never tried to take anybody away, or it was not like rape and pillage like Europeans did. Okay, so, and then we know we've seen the pictures and the accounts of different kings who refused to trade their slaves or refused to trade their people with the slave catchers, because after they found out what they were really doing with them, they refused. So all of this stuff, all of these stories where they tell you about, Africans, that Africans in some way were complicit with the slave trade is not true. Okay, that's what C. Freeman L. was teaching, and he was teaching on that fact. And then he said, well, if y'all don't believe me, he said, think about this. Before drugs and black exploitation films in the United States of America, he was like, black folks didn't hurt black folks. That there was no animosity between black people. And it was like not until they came out and the black exploitation films came out and drugs were introduced into the ghettos, into the black ghettos, because other races of people also had ghettos. We weren't the only ones that had ghettos. But when drugs entered into our neighborhoods, that's when fratricide also entered into our neighborhoods. Because before that, we didn't kill each other. Especially when we were in slavery times, and throughout all of that, there was no, pretty much zero black on black crime. So black on black crime, fratricide, killing of each other, was introduced to us as a curse. And as we kept on going through it, right, it continually got worse, because once the overseers found out that, okay, because look, when did it get to be at its peak? It got to be at its peak when crack cocaine was introduced. And think about all of the things that happened during the time that crack cocaine, and of course the biggest crack dealer ever, Ronald Reagan, and his wife Nancy, when they introduced crack cocaine into the ghettos of the United States of America, fratricide took off like crazy. And the sad part about it is that you had black men fighting other black men over things that they didn't even own. You don't own your hood. Probably more likely than not, there is a Caucasian person that owned the stuff in your hood, or it was owned by the government, which was a project or something like that. But people were killing each other over what? Turf that they didn't even own, over drugs that were readily available that anybody could get. They were killing themselves over pretty much a facade. So what does that sound like? It's spiritual. It's spiritual to its core. And the same thing with black exploitation movies and all of that, because all of a sudden we had this, and who made those movies? And see, up until then, we weren't in the movies. We weren't in the movies like that. We weren't allowed to be in movies like that. And even up until recently, every part that we've played has been, and still now, what is it? We're gangsters, we're prostitutes, we're drug dealers. We are, all of the negative things in society. And we were talking about, how you go through and you look at how Hollywood has portrayed every single indigenous race. The way that they portrayed Native Americans as savages, even Asians, how they portrayed Asians, as with the skinny eyes and and somehow unable to talk or whatever, with big teeth and all of that. All of these things are propaganda done through the media. The same thing. Every single indigenous race of people has been portrayed in a negative light. And then what also happened was that life, or the value of a life, was made invaluable. So the value of life, as things went through, it dropped. Why? Because everybody was so busy, worried about chasing money and worried about chasing all this stuff, which we didn't have. See, when we didn't have anything, we weren't really excited about getting anything. And that's why we always talk about, like, even when we go places, we used to go places on mission trips, right? And Americans always try to say, oh, well, look how bad they're doing. But what we don't look at is they like the way they live. They're not looking to have the things that we have, not necessarily. So they might not be interested in a big car and a big house and all this kind of stuff. But what happens is when the propaganda people and the media people dangle that carrot out there, then all of a sudden you create what? You create a desire. You create a want. You create something that somebody wants. And what do those things stem from? They stem from jealousy and envy. As a matter of fact, in the first book that I ever wrote, called The Power of 10, and I wrote in there because I was going through and talking about how the commandments were based on human nature and how people have been spiritually tricked by the Bible into believing that these things, that these actual emotions exist, because jealousy and envy and hatred and fear and all of these things, these are things that are embedded in you spiritually through the scriptures. Because when you read them, every time you read them and they go into your eye gate, your ear gate, all of that, every time you do that, guess what? You leave yourself wide open for spiritual attack. And it's easy for you once because you didn't know that there was no such thing as jealousy. And you didn't know there was no such thing, until they told you, remember it said in the Bible, it said, Adam and Eve, their eyes were open and they realized that they were naked and they were ashamed and they were afraid. See, because before somebody told you that, you didn't know that. And that's what I'm trying to get across. Until somebody told you that it was okay to kill, that it was okay for Cain to kill Abel, because the punishment said, just go ahead, you're gone, and go get you a wife, go get you a woman, have some kids. That was the punishment. He talked about all this stuff. I'll never be able to, his blood cries on the ground. I'll never be able to bear this. But then it's like, okay, well, I forgive you. Go ahead, bye. And that's why we got the same stuff going on now. We have the exact same thing going on now, except for God ain't forgiving you. God is putting your butt in jail. Remember, and that's what the difference is. So when y'all keep talking about how certain races of people get away with stuff or don't get harsh punishments or don't get harsh penalties, that's where it comes from. It was embedded and framed long time ago. And that's why I always tell everybody, look, the King James Version of the Bible is a curse, an incantation, and spells so that we live a certain way. And the powers that be can control you and control us. Simple as that. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the everything. Oh, and I got something coming down the line because I got to get out of trouble. South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina is trying to put me in jail, and I don't deserve to be there. All right. Anyway, I love you.